The Dubai sun felt like a blessing. Sarah Whitman tilted her face towards it, closing her eyes for a brief moment as she stepped out of the chilled lobby of the Emirates Tower and into the golden heat of the afternoon. She had just closed the biggest deal of her career. The contract with Mizzen Capital was signed, sealed, and delivered. The air didn't just feel warm, it felt charged with possibility. For Sarah Whitman, Dubai was the pinnacle, a testament to a decade of work, of late nights, of sacrifices. Today, it was also a playground, and she intended to enjoy it. Her phone buzzed in the pocket of her elegant linen blazer. A message from her husband, Mr. Whitman. "So proud of you. Go buy something ridiculously expensive. I love you." Sarah smiled, a genuine, effortless expression that reached her eyes. She typed back quickly. Sarah said, "Don't tempt me. Calling you after. Love you more." Her first stop was the boutique. The gold heels were an impulse buy, but they were perfect. Sleek, elegant, and utterly impractical. She pictured Mr. Whitman's face when he saw them. "You bought weapons?" he'd joke. She had them put in a distinctive glossy black bag with gold script. For the next hour, she drifted through the Dubai Mall, a queen in her kingdom of glass and marble. She bought a silk scarf for her mother, a tiny, absurdly expensive model racing car for Mr. Whitman's desk, and simply allowed herself to be swept along by the river of well-dressed shoppers under the impossibly high ceilings. But in a crowd of thousands, it is possible to feel utterly alone. And as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of violet and orange, the atmosphere within the mall began to shift. The energy changed from leisurely to purposeful. The crowds thinned, and Sarah Whitman began to feel a familiar, cold sensation tracing its way down her spine, the feeling of being watched. It started subtly. A man in a dark polo shirt seemed to be at the same jewelry counter she was. Then he was there again, near the art installation, pretending to be on his phone. Same man, different hat. Coincidence, she told herself. Paranoia. It's been a long week. She decided to head back to her hotel. Cutting through the less crowded luxury wing was faster. The polished marble here was darker, the storefronts more severe and exclusive. The ambient music seemed quieter. Her own footsteps echoed. That's when she saw him again, or someone like him, standing by a pillar, not looking at her, but not looking away either. He was speaking softly into his cuff. Her heart began to drum a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She quickened her pace. She pulled out her phone, her thumb hovering over Mr. Whitman's name. She hit call. It rang once, twice, 4 times. Voicemail. "Hey, this is Mr. David Whitman. You know what to do." Beep. "David, pick up," she whispered, her voice tight. She called again. Again, it went to voicemail. In San Francisco, David Whitman was leading a donor meeting for his nonprofit. His phone, set to silent, vibrated insistently in his pocket. He ignored it. It was the most expensive decision of his life. A wave of cold fear washed over her. She was being silly, wasn't she? This was Dubai, one of the safest cities on earth. But logic was losing its battle with primal fear. She ducked into a secluded alcove near a closed store, her back against the cool wall. Her hands trembled as she opened her voice messaging app. She held the phone close to her lips, her voice a desperate, hushed whisper.
"Babe, I think I'm being followed."
"There's this guy. I've seen him 3 times. He's just standing there. I'm in the mall, the fancy part. My phone's almost dead. Please call me back as soon as you get this. I'm scared." The message sent with a soft whoosh. She took a deep breath, peering around the corner. The man was gone. Relief, sweet and dizzying, flooded her system. "See, you're imagining things. Jet lag. Adrenaline crash." She stepped out of the alcove, smoothing her blazer, trying to reclaim her composure. She just had to get to the taxi rank. She turned the final corner towards the main atrium exit and stopped dead. The same man was now standing directly under an exit sign, arms crossed. He wasn't pretending anymore. He was looking right at her. And he wasn't alone. A second man, larger, stood a few feet behind him. Sarah's blood ran cold. She spun around to retreat and found her path blocked by a third man. He held up a hand, not threateningly, but with an air of cold, official finality. In the security control room, senior technician Tariq Hassan sipped his Karak tea. His eyes flicked across the bank of monitors. He saw the woman in the black jihab, the one who looked frightened. He saw the three men converging. Standard undercover security, he assumed. Apprehending a shoplifter, perhaps. He made a mental note to check the log later. He glanced at camera feed ALM 12, focused on the luxury wing corridor. The woman looked up, her face a pale mask of fear. One of the men reached inside his jacket. Tariq leaned forward. That was unusual. At that exact moment, 21 hours, 45 minutes, and 8 seconds, every single screen on his console flickered. Not a power cut. The lights in the room stayed on. This was different. The feeds didn't just go black. They dissolved into a swirling, chaotic mess of green and black pixels, a digital vortex. Wait, what was that? Yelm 12 just no. No, no, no. The sound of frantic typing echoed in the suddenly silent room. South atrium's down. Luxury wings down. All of them. I'm locked out. It's a full system collapse. For 7 minutes and 23 seconds, the most surveilled retail space on Earth went blind. When the system rebooted, the corridor was empty. Sarah Whitman was gone. Her smartphone was found on the floor, its screen a spiderweb of cracks. There was no sign of a struggle. No dropped purse. No scream. Just a single gold high-heeled shoe, kicked beneath a potted palm tree, as if it had been forgotten. The only thing left behind was the perfect silence of the void. And a question. How do you make a woman disappear from a room with 1,000 eyes? You turn off the lights. The silence in the Dubai Mall security control room was not merely an absence of sound. It was a heavy, pressurized void, thick with the hum of servers and the scent of cold anxiety. Captain Jamila Rashid stood perfectly still, her sharp eyes taking in the scene. The bank of monitors now restored to their silent, godlike vigil, the pale face of senior technician Tariq Hassan, and the lingering digital ghost of the woman who had just been erased from existence. For Captain Rashid, chaos was a language. A splatter of blood told a story. A broken lock was a confession. But this was a different kind of crime scene. There was no physical evidence to bag, no body to mourn. There was only code. And silence. "Talk to me, Tariq," she said, her voice calm but leaving no room for hesitation. She did not look away from the main monitor, which now replayed the final, glitching seconds from camera ALM 12. Tariq's hands fluttered over his keyboard, bringing up system logs. "It wasn't a crash, Captain. The system has triple redundancy power and data lines. A crash would have triggered backups. This was a command." He pulled up a complex diagnostic interface. At 21 hours, 45 minutes, and 8 seconds, a remote administrative override was executed. It didn't break the system. It used a master key. It issued a simultaneous disable command to every camera, microphone, and motion sensor in Sector G7. That's the entire luxury wing and its service corridors. I have seen many things in my career. A perfect crime does not exist. There is always a mistake, an emotion, a thread. But this was different. This was cold. It was like performing surgery via satellite. The precision was insulting. The cyberforensics team arrived, a trio of specialists who moved with the quiet reverence of archivists entering a sacred tomb. They didn't touch the main console. Instead, they connected their own hardened laptops to mirrored ports, beginning the delicate work of cloning the system's memory for analysis. The first rule of a digital crime scene is to assume the perpetrator is still watching. We work on a reflection, a ghost image. That way, if they left any traps behind, they trigger on the copy, not on the original evidence. Hours bled together. The only light came from the monitors, painting their faces in shades of blue and green. The case was no longer a missing person. It was a cyber-terrorism event on state property. The breakthrough came not from the mall's servers, but from its access logs. The login credentials used for the override, they were mine. Captain Rashid turned to him, her expression unreadable. Not my current ones, Tariq stammered, his voice tight with fear. My old ones. From 6 months ago. The system forced a password rotation after the last security audit. Those old credentials should be dead. Deleted. They were resurrected. It was the first thread. Frayed but tangible. Someone hadn't just hacked the system. They had cloned a key from a past life. This required deep internal knowledge. This was an inside job. Across the world, in a San Francisco apartment suddenly too large and too silent, Mr. Whitman was tearing his life apart. The police had called. His wife was missing. The word didn't feel real. Missing was for children in supermarkets, not for CEOs in the world's most secure mall. His wife's last message played on a loop on his phone speaker, her whispered terror a shard of ice in his heart. Babe, I think I'm being followed. He had to do something. Waiting was a special kind of torture. He was a software architect. His world was built on logic, on passwords, on access. He opened Sarah's personal laptop. It asked for a password. He didn't guess. He knew her. He typed in the name of their first dog, followed by the year they met. The desktop bloomed to life. Her world was meticulously organized. He went straight to her cloud storage. There, among folders labeled Mizzen Deal and tax docs, was one simply named Icarus. He clicked it. It was encrypted. Sarah loved Greek myths. Icarus, the boy who flew too close to the sun. It was a warning to herself. A project that was dangerous. She thought someone was stealing from the company. She was building a case. He tried every combination he could think of. Their anniversary. Her birthday. Nothing worked. He stared at her last text to him. Calling you after. Love you more. After. After the deal. After the victory. He typed in the name of the deal. Mizzen Capital Contract Final. The folder unlocked. Inside was a spiderweb of financial documents. Spreadsheets with long columns of numbers. Wire transfer records. And a single, stark PDF titled Summary. It was a forensic audit, conducted in secret. It detailed a sophisticated slow bleed of company funds, small amounts siphoned off through a daisy chain of shell corporations and dummy vendors. The final page had a conclusion, highlighted in yellow. Primary beneficiary trail leads to a holding company, Pomegranate Holdings, registered in Luxembourg. Ultimate ownership, opaque. And scrawled in Sarah's digital note-taking app, a single chilling line. Why is Carl so nervous about the Q3 numbers? Carl Richter, Sarah's COO, her second in command. In the glittering heart of Dubai, a digital scalpel had been used to vanish a woman. In a quiet apartment in California, her husband had just found the motive. Sarah Whitman hadn't just been closing a deal. She had been flying too close to the sun, and someone had decided to melt her wings. Back in the control room, Captain Rashid's phone buzzed. It was her counterpart in cybercrimes. Jamila, we found something else in the network traffic from during the blackout. A tiny data packet, sent from a maintenance terminal in the server room. It's a kill code, but it's wrapped in encryption we've never seen before. Military grade. This isn't a corporate hit, Captain. This is espionage. Captain Rashid ended the call. She looked from Tariq's terrified face to the frozen image of Sarah Whitman on the screen. The case had just fractured into 100 new pieces, and one of them was shaped like a knife. The encrypted data packet found in the mall's server traffic was a ghost, a thing that shouldn't exist, yet whose presence changed everything. It was a sophisticated, self-erasing digital payload designed to leave no trace of its contents, only the faintest whisper of its passage. For Captain Rashid, it was the first sign that the disappearance of Sarah Whitman was not a singular act of malice, but the opening move in a much larger, more dangerous game. In the world of security, there are lines. Corporate espionage is one thing. State-level cyber warfare is another. The encryption on that packet was a signature. It belonged to a tier of player that operated in shadows, far above the pay grade of a disgruntled COO or a rival corporation. The discovery shifted the investigation's center of gravity. The case was no longer just Captain Rashid's. Men in dark, unmarked suits from state security arrived, their badges granting them instant, silent authority. They imaged the servers and left with the evidence, their faces giving nothing away. The message was clear: proceed, but tread carefully. When they walk in, the air gets thin. You know you are no longer hunting a criminal. You are navigating a minefield. The truth becomes secondary to stability. My job was to find a woman, but I was suddenly stepping into a war between ghosts. While Rashid navigated this new political labyrinth, Mr. Whitman was building his own case from 8,000 miles away. The Icarus files were a roadmap to a conspiracy, but he lacked the authority to follow it. He needed a guide, someone who could operate in the digital underworld without leaving a trace. He found Felix Pope, a freelance digital security consultant. Pope existed in the hazy space between white-hat hacker and corporate mercenary. His online reputation was impeccable, his fees were astronomical, and his motto was simple: I find what isn't there. Their first conversation was over an encrypted line. You're the husband. I am. And you want me to find out who made your wife disappear. I want you to help me prove who did it. I have a name, Carl Richter. I have financial trails. I need someone to follow them into the dark. Pope was silent for a moment. The Dubai Mall blackout. That was elegant work. That's not embezzlement. That's an art form. You're Mr. Richter. He's a numbers man. This is something else. This is a scalpel. But sure, send me what you have. Let's see where the rabbit hole goes. Meanwhile, in Dubai, the investigation into the resurrected credentials was hitting a wall. Tariq, the security technician, was cleared of direct involvement, but was drowning in guilt. Under Captain Rashid's patient questioning, he remembered something. 6 months ago, when we did the system-wide password reset, there was a consultant from a firm called Cygnus Solutions. He was here for the audit. He had full access. For a week. He was very interested in the legacy authentication protocols. Cygnus Solutions. The name meant nothing to Rashid. A quick search revealed it was a boutique Swiss firm with a single, cryptic line on its website, providing tailored digital infrastructure solutions. There was no phone number, only a secure contact form. It was a ghost company. For every step forward, the investigation took 2 steps into deeper shadow. A ghost company, a ghost packet, a ghost key. Sarah Whitman had been vanished by professionals who specialized in not existing. Pope's first report to Mr. Whitman was a shock. He hadn't started with Carl Richter. He'd started with the encrypted packet's metadata. The encryption is a variant of Azure Lotus, a toolkit developed by a now disbanded unit of the French DGSE. It wasn't designed for corporate theft. It was designed for silencing high-value targets in non-permissive environments. Someone didn't just use this. They had to have paid a fortune for it or called in a monumental favor. This wasn't a business decision. This was a strategic elimination. The email ended with a question. What was your wife really working on? Mr. Whitman scrolled back through the Icarus files. He'd been so focused on the embezzlement, he'd missed the bigger picture. He found it buried in a subfolder, a project outline not for Whitman Cyber Solutions, but for something else, something personal, Project Chimera, a proposal for an AI-driven audit tool so powerful it could trace any financial transaction through any number of shell companies back to its original source in minutes. It was the ultimate truth machine, and she had pitched it directly to Mizzen Capital, positioning it as a tool for them to clean up the entire region's financial system. She hadn't just been auditing her own company. She had been building a weapon, and she had offered it to the most powerful financial institution in the Middle East. I felt cold. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about power. Sarah had built a light so bright it could expose every secret in the darkest corners of the world's finances. And someone somewhere decided that light had to be extinguished. He called Captain Rashid. The conversation was tense, the line crackling with the static of distance and fear. It wasn't just about the money she found, Mr. Whitman said, his voice tight. It was about what she was building. Project Chimera. She was going to give it to Mizzen. Captain Rashid was silent for a long moment. Mizzen Capital, she finally said, her tone carefully neutral. That is a very significant name, Mr. Whitman. A very powerful name. Are they involved? In this city, she replied, her voice dropping, everyone is involved. But proving it is like trying to hold water in your hands. I will look into this. But as she ended the call, she knew the truth. The unseen hand that had reached into the mall's security system hadn't belonged to Carl Richter. It belonged to someone who saw Sarah Whitman not as a threat to their balance sheet, but to their entire world. And that made her not just missing, but already gone. The revelation of Project Chimera shifted the investigation from a corporate cover-up to something far more ominous. Captain Rashid now understood they weren't just looking for a missing CEO. They were searching for a ghost who had built a weapon capable of unraveling global financial secrets. And someone powerful enough had decided that weapon, and its creator, could not see the light of day. Some truths are too dangerous to possess. Sarah Whitman hadn't just stumbled upon a secret. She had built a lighthouse aimed directly at the shadows where empires hide their sins. Now, that light had been snuffed out. While Captain Rashid navigated the political quagmire of investigating an entity like Mizzen Capital, Mr. Whitman and Felix Pope focused on the only lead that felt tangible, the digital footprint of the abduction itself. Pope, operating from a secure server cluster somewhere in Scandinavia, began dissecting the mall's network logs from the night of the disappearance with surgical precision. Forget the cameras. They're a distraction, a magician's flourish. The real trick happened in the blind spots. I'm looking at the mall's internal network, Wi-Fi access points, Bluetooth transmitters, even the goddamn smart lighting system. Everything has a heartbeat. And your wife's devices had a heartbeat too. Sarah's iPhone was cracked and in evidence. Her laptop was with Mr. Whitman. But she wore a premium fitness tracker, a sleek, expensive model that synced via Bluetooth. She never took it off. She joked it was her lifeline. It tracked her sleep, her heart rate, everything. I'd completely forgotten about it. Hope hadn't. In the vast digital ocean of the mall's network, Hope was hunting for a single faint ping, a signal that should have vanished with everything else. He found it. At 21 hours 46 minutes and 1 second, 53 seconds into the blackout, a Bluetooth low-energy signal from Sarah Whitman's watch attempted to connect to the network. It failed, of course. The entire system was down, but the attempt was logged by a single standalone RFID reader near a service elevator. A device so rudimentary it wasn't even on the main network. See that? It's a ghost. A digital echo. The signal is weak. Fading. But it's there. And it's moving. It's heading away from the luxury wing, toward the service corridors. The signal pulsed twice more, each fainter than the last, painting a tragic trail of movement. The final ping came from a service elevator, descending to the delivery sublevel. And then nothing. Silence. The service tunnels. Of course. They run like veins beneath the entire city. They are the perfect blind spot. They handle deliveries, waste disposal, and discreet exits. We had been looking up. We should have been looking down. Armed with this new data, Rashid obtained a warrant to search the service corridors and review their limited security footage. Cameras meant for operational safety, not high-resolution surveillance. The footage was grainy, low frame rate. But it told a story. At 21:47, a nondescript white service van, common as dust in Dubai, was recorded exiting a loading bay. Its license plate was smudged with dirt, unreadable. Its timing was perfect, leaving just minutes after the blackout ended. It was a professional extraction. Clean, efficient, and utterly chilling. They hadn't just taken her, they had transported her. Like freight. Meanwhile, Pope's investigation into the encrypted kill code, Azure Lotus, yielded another terrifying clue. The code hadn't been executed from an external IP address. It had been planted weeks earlier, lying dormant in the system's maintenance subroutines, waiting for a remote trigger. This wasn't a hack. It was a scheduled demolition. Someone had inside access to plant the charges. The blackout was just the detonation. This level of access doesn't come from bribing a low-level tech. This comes from the top. The evidence was coalescing, pointing toward a terrifying conclusion. This was an inside job with outside sponsorship, a perfect alliance of motive and means. Captain Rashid made a decision. It was time to stop looking at shadows and start confronting the people casting them. She needed to speak to Carl Richter. She found him not at his sleek office, but at a members-only club overlooking the marina, sipping an old-fashioned. He didn't look surprised to see her. "Captain, I wondered when you'd get to me. Let me guess. The embezzlement? Sarah's little pet project?" She was paranoid, convinced there was a rat in the walls. She was brilliant, but brilliance often borders on madness. "The money is missing, Mr. Richter," Rashid stated, her voice flat. "Money is always moving, Captain. It's what it does." Her audit was flawed. She saw patterns that weren't there. "I tried to tell her. She wouldn't listen." "Where is she?" Richter smiled, a thin, cold expression. "I have no idea. Perhaps she finally cracked. Perhaps she ran. Perhaps her powerful new friends at Mizzen offered her a new life without the complications of her old one." He was smooth. Too smooth. He was directing the conversation, painting a picture of an unstable woman who had either fled or been recruited. It was the perfect defense. But as Captain Rashid left the club, her phone vibrated. It was a message from her contact in cybercrimes. The analysis of the Azure Lotus code's trigger point was complete. The signal that had activated the sleeping digital bomb hadn't come from a server farm or a hacker's den. It had come from Carl Richter's smartphone. He hadn't just known about it. He had pressed the button. The air in the private club was thick with the scent of expensive whiskey and unspoken power. Captain Rashid stood facing Carl Richter, the COO of Whitman Cyber Solutions, who regarded her with the calm amusement of a man who believed himself untouchable. His alibi was a fortress, his demeanor polished to a dismissive shine. But Rashid now held the key to a hidden door in that fortress, a key made of code. In the digital age, guilt is not written in fingerprints or witnessed by eyes. It is etched in timestamps and IP addresses. A single packet of data can be a confession, and Captain Rashid had just received one. She didn't reveal the discovery immediately. Instead, she let Richter's smug narrative hang in the air between them. He had painted Sarah as paranoid, unstable, a brilliant mind crumbling under pressure. It was a clever story, designed to seed doubt and provide plausible deniability for her disappearance. Men like Richter are masters of narrative. They believe if they control the story, they control the truth. But data doesn't lie. It doesn't get paranoid. It just is. She left him there, nursing his drink and his illusion of control. The moment she was in her car, she issued 2 orders. The first, a full forensic team to sweep Carl Richter's office and personal devices. The second, pull all his financials, travel records, and communication logs for the past 6 months. The warrant, based on the digital evidence of the Azure Lotus trigger, was approved in minutes. Back at headquarters, the scope of Richter's betrayal began to unfold. The embezzlement Sarah had uncovered was real, but it was a side hustle. A personal gravy train he'd been running for years. The real money, the life-changing money, came from a single, massive transfer into a Cayman Islands account 2 weeks before Sarah's disappearance. The amount was $15 million. The source was a shell corporation so layered it was virtually untraceable. But Felix Pope, working in parallel with Mr. Whitman, was already peeling back those layers. Felix Pope, secure chat log. Whitman, the shell leads back to a holding company in Luxembourg. Pomegranate Holdings. Pope, yeah. And guess who owns a silent, non-voting stake in Pomegranate? A certain sovereign wealth fund whose name rhymes with Mizzen Capital. Pope, They didn't pay him to steal. They paid him for access. And for a trigger finger. The pieces locked into place with a cold, final click. Richter had provided the inside access to plant the Azure Lotus kill code in the mall's systems. And he had been paid a king's ransom to be the one to press the button when the time was right, providing his enemies with the ultimate plausible deniability. A fall guy already implicated in crime. Sarah Whitman had been right about the rat in the walls. She just hadn't realized it was the rat who would be paid to spring the trap. While the net tightened around Richter, Mr. Whitman was falling down another rabbit hole entirely. Pope had sent him a second, more disturbing file recovered from Sarah's encrypted Icarus folder. It was a draft email, never sent, addressed to Yusuf Al-Jaber at Mizzen Capital. Furthermore, the initial results of the Chimera audit, while preliminary, have revealed several anomalous transactions within your own organization. These transactions, while cleverly obscured, follow the same pattern of obfuscation I uncovered at my own company. I believe we may have a common adversary. I would like to discuss this in person, with complete discretion, during my upcoming trip. My blood ran cold. She wasn't just offering them a weapon. She was telling them they had been compromised. She was walking into the lion's den and telling the lion it had parasites. She hadn't been killed to cover up an embezzlement at her own company. She had been vanished because she had discovered a cancer inside Mizzen Capital itself. A cancer someone powerful wanted to cut out before she could expose it to the world. Captain Rashid's team moved on Richter's apartment. They found it stripped. His passport was gone. His hard drives had been wiped using a professional-grade data shredding utility. He was in the wind, but he'd been sloppy. In his haste, he'd forgotten a single, burner phone tucked inside a sofa cushion. It contained one number, and 1-cent message, timed an hour before the mall blackout. MSGTO unknown number. The package is in transit. The sun is setting. The response, 2 minutes later. The desert will receive it. It was the confirmation. The desert, a classic metaphor for a place where things and people can vanish without a trace. The investigation was now a race against time. Carl Richter was a pawn, a fugitive who would likely soon meet his own end in whatever desert he was being lured to. But Sarah might still be alive. She was a high-value asset. Her mind, her knowledge of Project Chimera, was a treasure. They would want to break her before they disposed of her. Captain Rashid requested an urgent and deeply uncomfortable meeting with Yusuf Al-Jaber at Mizzen Capital. She was received in a towering office that looked out over the entire city. Al-Jaber was as impeccably polite as ever, but the warmth was gone, replaced by a glacial formality. "A woman is missing, Mr. Al-Jaber. A woman you were doing business with. Evidence suggests her disappearance is linked to the theft of her intellectual property and a conspiracy within your own organization." Yusuf Al-Jaber steepled his fingers. "Captain Rashid," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Mizzen Capital is a fortress of integrity. We mourn Ms. Whitman's absence and are cooperating fully. But you are dancing on the edge of a very sharp blade. The desert has many secrets, and it does not like to give them up. Be certain you wish to go digging." It wasn't a denial. It was a warning, a threat wrapped in silk. As she left, her phone buzzed. It was Mr. Whitman. His voice was raw with a new kind of fear. "They're in my house," he said, the words barely a whisper. "I think they're looking for the Icarus files." The hunt for Sarah Whitman was no longer just an investigation. It had come home. The line went dead. Mr. Whitman stood frozen in the hallway of his San Francisco home, the silence that followed his own words echoing louder than any scream. "They're in my house." The thought was a cold spike driven into his spine. He was a software architect, a man who solved problems with code and logic. The visceral, physical reality of an intrusion was a language he didn't speak. Fear has a taste. It's metallic, like a penny on the tongue. For David Whitman, that taste flooded his mouth as he stood in the dark, listening to the floorboards creak under a weight that was not his own. The digital hunt for his wife had just crashed through his front door. He had been reviewing Felix Pope's latest findings, a complex map of the shell corporations linking Carl Richter's payment back to Mizen's sovereign wealth fund, when he'd heard it. The subtle scrape of a key turning not in the lock, but with a soft, metallic tick that spoke of tools, not ownership. He'd killed his laptop screen and slipped into the hall just as the front door swung open. Two figures, dressed in dark, nondescript clothing, moved into his living room with a practiced, economical silence. They didn't rummage. They processed. One went straight to Sarah's home office nook. The other began methodically scanning the bookshelves, his fingers gliding over spines, looking for anything that felt out of place. They weren't thieves. Thieves make noise. They take things. These men, they were auditors. They were there to verify, to erase. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that if they found what they were looking for, I would become another vanished person. Another mystery. His phone was in his hand. He didn't call 911. He called Felix Pope. "They're here," he breathed into the phone, his voice a ghost of sound. Pope's response was immediate, his tone cutting through the digital haze with sharp clarity. "Get out. Now. Don't take anything. The back door. Go to the safe location I sent you. Now." Mr. Whitman didn't argue. He turned, moving on the balls of his feet down the hall toward the kitchen and the rear exit. A third man stood there, a silhouette against the moonlit backyard, blocking his escape. He'd been posted as a lookout. There was a moment of perfect, suspended silence. The man's hand moved toward his jacket. Sometimes the brain works faster than fear. It connects dots across vast distances. The man's posture, the slight bulge under his arm, the way he stood, filling the doorway. Mr. Whitman didn't think. He acted. He grabbed a heavy ceramic vase from a side table and threw it not at the man, but at the large window to the left of the door. The crash was catastrophic, a shocking explosion of noise in the silent night. The intruder flinched, turning instinctively toward the sound. It was all the distraction Mr. Whitman needed. He lunged, not for the door, but for the side yard, vaulting over a low fence and disappearing into the labyrinth of his quiet neighborhood, the man's low curse fading behind him. Across the world, Captain Rashid received Pope's encrypted alert. The breach at the Whitman residence changed everything. It confirmed the threat was active, global, and utterly ruthless. It also gave her a desperate idea. If they were cleaning house, they would be back for the source. Carl Richter was the loose thread, and a scared man was a predictable man. She had his burner phone pinged. The signal came from a private airfield on the outskirts of Dubai. A small jet was scheduled for an unsanctioned departure to Sana'a, Yemen, a country with no extradition treaty with anyone. Richter thought he was escaping. He was being delivered. Yemen wasn't a sanctuary. It was a disposal site. He was the package, and they were taking out the trash. She couldn't stop the plane. The politics were impossible, but she could send a message. She authorized a direct text to the burner phone from an untraceable number. MSG from unknown number. "They're not taking you to safety. They're taking you to the desert. Ask them about the last man who retired to Sana'a. He was found in pieces." She then turned her attention to the only other person who might have answers. Tariq, the mall security technician. He was being held in a safe house, a nervous wreck. She didn't confront him. She offered him a deal. "They used you, Tariq," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Your credentials, your access. When this is over, they will vanish you too to tidy up. Help me now, and I can protect you." Trembling, he broke. He remembered the consultant from Cygnus Solutions, the one who had been so interested in legacy systems. He'd had a distinctive feature. A tattoo on his inner wrist, visible when he reached for a keyboard. A stylized scorpion. A scorpion, the symbol of a known private military contractor, Black Sand Solutions, often employed for deniable operations by various intelligence agencies and their corporate partners. The ghost had a name. Armed with this, Rashid went back to Yusuf al-Jaber. This time, she wasn't asking. She was presenting facts. Carl Richter is on a plane to Yemen, courtesy of a shell company linked to your investment arm. The malware used in my mall was planted by a contractor with a scorpion tattoo, a known asset of black sand. And 2 hours ago, men connected to that same firm broke into Mr. Whitman's home in California. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. The story is unraveling, Mr. Aljaber. You can still control how it ends. Where is Sarah Whitman? Aljaber's polished facade finally cracked. Not with guilt, but with irritation. The irritation of a man whose elegant solution was becoming messy. You are digging in places that will bury you, Captain, he said, his voice low. But since you insist on chasing phantoms, try the shifting sands. The old Al-Mazrah district. Warehouses that are not warehouses. Look for the door with no handle. It was a dismissal, and a clue, thrown to her like a bone to a dog, either to send her on a wild goose chase, or because Sarah Whitman had already been moved, and her location was now a currency to be traded. Captain Rashid left, already mobilizing her team. The Al-Mazrah district was a vast, crumbling maze of old and new industrial buildings. They were going to have to knock on every door, and hope one of them didn't have a scorpion behind it. The Al-Mazrah district was a ghost of old Dubai, a sprawling skeletal remains of industry slowly being consumed by the glittering city rising around it. At night, it was a labyrinth of shadows, where the only light came from the distant glow of skyscrapers and the occasional flicker of a dying street lamp. Captain Rashid led the raid team herself, her bulletproof vest feeling both heavy and flimsy against the oppressive silence. Some places feel wrong. It's not in the sight, but in the silence. The Al-Mazrah district didn't just lack people, it lacked life. The air itself was stale, tasting of dust, diesel, and secrets best left buried. Yusuf Aljaber's tip, warehouses that are not warehouses, was infuriatingly vague. For hours, they moved through the district, checking buildings that were either abandoned or filled with legitimate, if shabby, operations. The team's morale was dipping, the suspense gnawing at their resolve. The feeling that this was an elaborate wild goose chase grew with every empty room. Stay sharp. You wouldn't have sent us here for nothing. It's either a trap or a test. Look for anything that doesn't belong. Then, Sergeant Hassan called it in. He'd found a structure that matched the eerie description. From the outside, it was a defunct textile warehouse, its sign faded to illegibility, windows boarded up. But the rust on the massive roll-up door was a little too uniform. The dust on the ground in front of it was undisturbed, as if it hadn't been opened in a decade. Yet, when he shined his light along the edges, he saw something else entirely. Captain, the main door's a prop, but there's a personnel door around the side. New hinges, no handle, just a keycard reader and a small, dark lens flush with the wall. It's a door with no handle. The team converged. This was it. The air grew electric. This was no longer a search, it was a breach. Felix Pope, patched into the operation remotely from an undisclosed location, spoke into Rashid's earpiece. That reader is a stealthskin series, military grade. If you try to force it, it'll likely trigger a lockdown or a silent alarm. I can't hack it from here. You need a key. As if on cue, a sleek, black sedan with tinted windows pulled up silently at the end of the alley. The driver's door opened, and a man in a dark suit emerged. He didn't approach the police line. He simply held up a single, white keycard between two fingers. Narrator VO. In a world of shadows, messages are delivered without words. The card was an answer, and an invitation. Captain Rashid took the card. It was blank, cool, and heavier than it should be. The man from the sedan got back in his car and drove away, swallowed by the night. He was a courier, a messenger from the very powers that had made Sarah Whitman disappear. This was no longer her investigation. It had been annexed. She was being allowed to proceed, for reasons she didn't understand. With a deep breath, she swiped the card. The reader light blinked from red to green. There was a soft, deep thunk as heavy magnetic locks disengaged. The door with no handle swung inward, revealing not a warehouse, but a stark, blindingly white, clinically clean corridor that looked like it belonged in a futuristic laboratory. The team moved in, weapons raised. The contrast was jarring. The exterior was decaying industrial. The interior was sterile, silent, and humming with expensive climate control. They cleared room after room. Empty offices. A server farm, its lights blinking in the silence. A medical bay, fully stocked but unused. It was a ghost facility. A place built for a purpose that had yet to be fulfilled, or had already been completed. At the end of the main corridor was another door. This one was heavier, reinforced steel. It too had a keycard reader. Rashid swiped the white card again. This lock didn't thunk. It hissed like a vacuum seal being broken. The door slid open sideways into the wall. The room inside was small, windowless, and freezing cold. The walls were lined with sophisticated monitoring equipment, all currently dark. In the center of the room sat a single high-tech chair, like something from a dentist's office, but fitted with leather restraints on the arms and legs. The chair was empty, but it wasn't unoccupied. On the seat lay a single, familiar object, a gold high-heeled shoe, the mate to the one found under the palm tree in the Dubai Mall. My heart stopped. It was a message, a taunt. We were in the right place, but we were too late. They had been here, and they had left a calling card. As forensics moved in to bag the shoe, Rashid's eyes were drawn to the one monitor that wasn't dark. A small, portable device sitting on a counter, its screen glowing with a single line of text. It was a live feed. She walked over, her boots echoing on the cold floor. The text was in English. It read, "Asset relocation in progress. Initiate cleanup protocol? Y/N." Below the text, a digital countdown was ticking down from 1 minute, 59 seconds, 58 seconds. A cleanup protocol. In a hidden facility. The words hung in the frigid air, dripping with implication. It didn't mean scrubbing floors. It meant erasing evidence, incinerating everything, and them with it. Captain Rashid's radio crackled. It was Sergeant Hassan, his voice tight with a new raw fear. He was still outside, securing the perimeter. "Captain," the main roll-up door. It just closed on its own, and I'm hearing a new sound, a low hum, coming from the vents. He took a shaky breath. "Captain, I smell gas."